Hello and welcome to my channel, Rhino here. Today I'm feeling a little bit bummed out that Ken Ham blocked me on Twitter. I'm really going to miss seeing his constant insecure tweets about how many people visit his Ark, and his accusations of intolerance against people that don't want the government to endorse a specific religion with tax dollars collected from people of multiple religions, as well as those who lack religion, while at the same time saying that being attracted to the wrong gender is a crime worthy of eternal torture as a punishment. Now here's the picture that I tweeted at him that was so offensive that he had to block me. So to get my dose of Ken Hamminess, I decided to start watching some AIG material. Today I'm watching What Really Happened to the Dinosaurs. This should be good.
What really happened to the dinosaurs?
Many people are perplexed by the topic of dinosaurs.
I think you mean most creationists. Normal people don't need to worry about it because we can accept that the Earth is billions of years old, and we were not always the dominant life form. It's not really confusing at all.
Where did they come from?
Well, the short answer is that they evolved from archosaurs during the Triassic period.
When did they live?
Between 230 and 65 million years ago, during the Mesozoic era, which contains the Triassic, Jurassic, and Cretaceous periods.
What happened to them?
Mass extinction, most likely caused by climate change. The details are still debated, but again, the most likely main event that kickstarted the mass extinction was the asteroid that hit Mexico. It would have kicked up enough debris to darken the entire planet for at least a few months, but possibly years. When the small debris fell back to Earth, it would have taken on the form of an acid mud rain. Not a nice place for huge animals to live.
You see, when you dig up a dinosaur skeleton...
Holy shit, back that camera up. I do not need to see every single one of your pores. That is not a dramatic shot, that's just bad camera work.
It doesn't come with a label attached saying, "Hi, I'm 65 million years old and this is what happened to me." We have to interpret that skeleton in relation to the past. So where did dinosaurs come from? What happened to them? When did they live?
I feel like you're repeating yourself here. Is this like that thing they do in bad Christian movies where the characters will have flashbacks to things that happened like just a couple minutes before? And yes, for the record, I am aware that the phrase bad Christian movie is a tautology.
I want to show you that when you take God at his word in the book of Genesis, that we can explain dinosaurs, and observational science actually confirms that explanation based upon the Bible.
I think that when you say observational science, what you really mean is cherry-picked bits of real science that on their own appear to confirm my pre-drawn conclusions, but in reality actually contradict what I want to believe. Is that about right? That's what I got out of it.
See, the Bible tells us that God made the land animals on day 6 of creation. And who else was created on day 6? Well, Adam and Eve. And how long ago was that? Well, when you add up all the dates in the Bible, about 6,000 years. So, taking God at his word in Genesis, dinosaurs lived beside people about 6,000 years ago.
And that right there is precisely why that I say if a God does exist, it cannot be the God of the Bible, as any part of the Bible that makes an actual testable claim has been refuted. Unless the God of the Bible is just a huge liar and made everything to look much older than it actually is for some reason. If you'll admit that your God is a lying douchebag asshole, then I will admit that refuting the claims of the Bible has not directly refuted your God.
And they were vegetarian to start with. Genesis chapter 1 verse 29 tells us that all the animals are vegetarian. But then Adam sinned, and because of sin, everything changed. The whole of creation now groans because of sin.
Yes, Ken. Everyone that exists must be horribly punished because one guy that we had nothing to do with made a mistake. And I'm not even sure if I would call it a mistake. I mean, God made Adam and Eve without knowledge of good and evil. He then told them not to eat the tree that would give them the knowledge of good and evil. So they, not knowing the difference between right or wrong, could not possibly have known that disobeying God would be considered wrong until after they had done it. That's like starting a car, putting it in gear, putting a 4-year-old in the driver's seat, and then getting mad at them when they crash for not knowing how to drive. And then grounding them for so long that all their descendants are also grounded. And all that aside, look at what they were punished for. Eating of the tree that grants knowledge. If that doesn't sum up religion nicely, then I don't know what does. I can't imagine not wanting my children to be curious. I was thrilled when my 8-year-old daughter asked me about the mating habits of different insects while we were camping. Yes, I consider her too young for a detailed explanation of how baby making works, but why the hell would I want to dampen her curiosity? Also, I know way too many gross details about the mating habits of different animals. And yes, giraffes are into water sports. I was the only parent at the zoo who knew what was going on between those two giraffes that one time. Everyone else seemed to think it was like dogs sniffing butts. Nope, he wanted to taste her pee. What was this video about again? Oh yeah, Ken Ham.
In fact, after the event of Noah's flood, God told Noah that now humans could eat meat, could eat animal flesh. But before that time, they're instructed only to be vegetarian.
So now that the animal population is so limited that eating one of anything will cause that species to go extinct, you may begin eating animals. Oh yeah, and burn one for your imaginary friend while you're at it.
So sometime after sin, obviously animals started changing their diets as well.
So there is a definite after the flood point where humans change their diets, but it's just a general sometime after sin for the animals? Do you have a Bible verse to back that up, or are you just making stuff up?
And the Bible tells us that there was a global flood, and 2 of every kind of land-dwelling, air-breathing animal went on board the boat that Noah built, Noah's Ark.
All the water-dwelling creatures were pretty much fucked, though, because the biology of saltwater and freshwater animals is very different. The freshwater fish have a specific balance of salt in their tissue, which draws the water around them into their bodies, thereby maintaining their water balance, so they don't need to drink. Saltwater fish have a problem where the salt in the ocean actually draws the water out of their bodies, so they constantly need to be drinking. Suddenly mix the fresh and salt water together like in a catastrophic global flood, and they all die because they're not adapted to the brackish environment that now exists.
Now people often say, wait a minute, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dinosaur kinds. No, there might be hundreds of dinosaur names, and many of those names are given to different variations within a dinosaur kind.
Please define a kind. I would never say that there are hundreds of dinosaur kinds. I would say that there are hundreds of known dinosaur species, with the possibility that there were thousands more that we don't know about. And I will fully admit that the word species has a bit of a fuzzy definition, but that's only because evolution is such a persistent fact that it can sometimes be hard to tell when speciation occurs. Generally, a species is defined as a group of organisms consisting of similar individuals capable of exchanging genes or breeding. But then you get these funny little ring species where neighboring populations of similar organisms can all breed with each other, but at the ends of this chain there are at least 2 populations that cannot breed with each other, but can still breed with the previous species in the ring. So by the above definition of species, they are not the same species as each other, but each is the same species as the previous one in the ring, meaning that they're all the same species. But hey, the reason we have trouble defining our word is because evolution is real. The reason you won't give a concrete definition for your word is also, I suspect, because evolution is real. No matter how you define it, there will always be certain kinds that don't quite fit in where they should.
But when you actually work through it, there's probably less than 50 dinosaur kinds. The T-Rex type kind, the raptor type kind, the sauropod type kind, and so it goes on.
You are jumping all over the taxonomic ranks. T-Rex is a species. Different raptors can be found in several different families, including but not limited to Saltopodidae, oviraptors, and dromaeosaurids. My apologies if any of those pronunciations were off. The term raptor is generally seen in the species name, but just saying raptor kind has you all over the place. And sauropod is a suborder. So in one sentence you have conflated the word kind with every level of taxonomy up to suborder. Let's go broad here and say that kind equals suborder. Humans are in the suborder Haplorini, or primates with dry noses. This would make us the same kind as every other primate out there with a dry nose, from spider monkeys to gorillas.
And the other thing to remember is that the average size of a dinosaur is only the size of a sheep or a German Shepherd dog or a small pony or something like that.
Yeah, but you specifically mentioned the T-Rex kind. Those guys were huge. A small one could weigh 4.5 metric tons. That's taking up a lot of room on a boat that's already hurting for space.
You see, some of the dinosaurs did grow large, like the sauropods, but even they hatched from eggs and were once young adults, and so would not have been that large. Actually, there was plenty of room on board Noah's Ark.
That's a good one, Kenny boy. Let's, for argument's sake, just say that you're right. 2 of every kind could fit on the Ark. So how do we feed them? Well, for every large predator, and there must be several, bear kind, dog kind, cat kind, and so on, they're all different kinds, you would need several pounds of fresh meat every day. In other words, even if you had room for all the animals you need to save, you still need a very large herd of animals for your predators to eat for a year. We're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of cattle or sheep just as food supply. And that's not even mentioning the food you would need for the herbivores and the dirt you would need for the farm, as without any refrigeration, any supplies you pack won't last the whole year, so you would need to grow it fresh. You would also need a supply of fresh water, both for drinking and for farming. Now, assuming the American average of consumption of 600 milliliters of water per day, that's 219 liters of water per person. And animals, but some of the animals were small, so let's cut that number in half to round it down to be generous. I know that a lot of those animals were bigger and would need a lot more water, but we're being generous here. So 100 liters of water per animal per day. By AIG's own estimate, there were about 16,000 individual animals on the Ark. So that's 1.6 million liters of water. 1 liter of water weighs 1 kilogram and takes up 1 cubic meter of space, so that's 1,600 metric tons of water, taking up 1,600 cubic meters of space. Now for farming. Let's pretend for a moment that they managed to find an acre of space on the boat for farming. That's nowhere near enough space to grow what you would need to feed 16,000 animals, much less the thousands more animals you would need to feed the original 16,000, but let's roll with it. On the low end, an acre of farmland will require about 3,500 liters of water per day, making 1.3 million liters of water, making another 1,300 metric tons of water, taking up another 1,300 cubic meters of space, for a total of 2,900 cubic meters of space lost to water, and 1 acre, or 4,000 square meters, lost to farming. At 137 meters by 22.9 meters, the dimensions of the Ark, each deck of the Ark had 3,137 square meters of floor space. There were 3 decks, so 1 whole deck and part of a second deck must be devoted to farming. Each deck had 4.5 meters of headroom, making it about 14,100 cubic meters per deck. But I doubt Noah could have managed to make a 4-meter-high waterproof tank, so let's be nice and give him a 2-meter-high tank. That would need to take up 1,450 square meters of floor space to fit the 2,900 cubic meters of water. So now we're down to a little over 800 square meters on the second deck, with a full 3,100 meters on the third deck, totaling a little under 4,000 square meters. That's about 43,000 square feet for my American friends, leaving 2.7 square feet of living space per animal, not including the thousands of herd animals needed to feed the carnivores. And that's assuming you could grow enough food in 1 single acre for this many animals. It's not. According to the Natural Resources Conservation Service website, you need approximately 1.8 acres of land per cow per year. If you don't mind starving your cattle, you could probably get by on less, but even if you only give them 1/10 of that, your 1-acre boat farm will still only be enough for 6 cows at most. That won't even feed the 7 cows you're supposed to keep alive because they're the clean animals, much less the thousands of other herbivores on board. That's enough math for now. Back to the video.
For 2 of every kind of the dinosaur kind. And I'm sure that God chose those young adults that were ready for the new world to populate in the new world.
So you're admitting that the dinos were adults? I thought I was being mean giving my huge 4.5-ton weight for a small adult T-Rex, but turns out I was spot on. I mean, usually the counter to that was, oh, they took the baby dinosaurs.
What happened to those land animals that didn't go on board the Ark? They were drowned. Many of them turned into fossils. The dinosaur fossils we find, most of them probably come from the time of the flood, over 4,300 years ago, and therefore they're only thousands of years old, not millions of years old.
Except if that were true, we would expect to find them all mixed up, but we don't. All of the dinosaur fossils ever found have been in the exact same order in the geologic column. If they were all killed in the same event, there wouldn't be any apparent order for them to be in. It would be a huge jumble.
Those that came off the Ark started to spread out over the earth, and then, because of changing conditions, many animals have become extinct, including the dinosaurs. Really, for animals to become extinct is nothing new. We see it happening every year.
Yeah, happens all the time. Happens a lot faster now that humans are having such a huge impact on the environment, but you deny that science too, don't you, Kenny?
Now, is there any evidence that's consistent with that explanation of dinosaurs?
Not if you're intellectually honest, but if you cherry pick and quote mine, you could probably manufacture some.
Actually, there is lots of evidence consistent with that. We have dragon legends all over the earth, just as we have flood legends.
How in the world does a dragon legend equal people and dinosaurs lived at the same time? There are plenty of animals alive today that could be exaggerated into dragons. Crocodiles and Komodo dragons come to mind. Several dragon legends have their dragons being more serpent-like, and there are plenty of huge snakes out there that could become those. And it's also quite possible that ancient tribes of people could have come across dinosaur bones and created legends around them as well. As for the flood legends, there are hundreds of them from different cultures and different time periods, some predating the biblical flood. Most of them are wildly different from each other. One common theme, though, is that they are usually concocted by people living in areas that are prone to local flooding. Funny how tribes of people living where floods occur would have stories about floods. Can't possibly be a coincidence.
Flood legends attest to the fact there was a real flood. Dragon legends attest to the fact there were real animals called dragons, and the descriptions of those creatures in many instances fit the dinosaurs. And then there are cave paintings all over the earth done by people hundreds of years ago who drew animals that they were familiar with, and some of those paintings look just like the dinosaurs.
The ones that are most clearly dinosaurs have been shown to be hoaxes or frauds. The remaining ones are heavily subject to pareidolia, the phenomenon in which our brains tend to interpret patterns that aren't really there and causes us to see meaning in shapes where there is none. Good example is when you look at a cloud and you see a picture. There's no picture there, it's just a cloud. That's pareidolia. But let's put all that aside and pretend that all these drawings are authentic and are supposed to be of the beast that we like to see in them. Are you saying that every drawing a person makes has to be based off of something they saw in reality? So because there are drawings of soot gremlins in the movie My Neighbor Totoro, soot gremlins must therefore exist? None of the drawings have enough detail to identify any species of dinosaur and could easily have been the product of ancient man's imagination.
And you know, there's even indication in the Bible of a dinosaur that lived beside a man after the flood. Go and read the book of Job, Job chapter 40, verse 15. Behemoth, the largest land animal God made. The description fits something like a sauropod dinosaur living with Job after the flood.
It also fits the description of an elephant or a hippo. The only problem is with the tail like a cedar, but it's been suggested that from context the tail might actually be referring to the penis, as the Hebrew word for move could also mean extend, and the second part of that verse is talking about the sinew around his stones or testicles. Another interpretation has the behemoth as just another mythological creature imagined by the author of Job, but inspired by the animals that he would be familiar with. Hybrid animals like this are fairly common throughout mythology, so unless you want to tell me that manticores, centaurs, and griffins also existed because someone wrote about them, then this isn't really evidence.
We've also found in our present world dinosaur bones with what appear to be red blood cells and soft tissue still in them, indicating they can't be millions of years old.
I've covered this before in previous videos, but I'll go over it briefly again. That discovery was made by Mary Schweitzer, a devout Christian who is on record as being sick and tired of creationists misinterpreting her work. In a nutshell, what happens is the iron in the living animal's blood, including dinosaurs, must be bound to other molecules to stop it from reacting with other molecules in the body. After death, the iron doesn't stay bound and forms iron nanoparticles, which causes protein and cell membranes to basically tie up in knots and act like formaldehyde, which, as we all know, is a preservative. Down below, I will link to Schweitzer's paper demonstrating this, and to a Live Science article explaining it in layman's terms.
You know, when people ask me what happened to the dinosaurs, my usual answer is, well, they died. But of course, they didn't die out millions of years ago. Many died at the time of the flood, and those that were alive on Noah's Ark, their descendants died out sometime after the flood. It's the Bible's history that explains dinosaurs.
It only explains it if you completely distort every scientific discovery about dinosaurs ever made. It takes an amazing amount of mental gymnastics to make the facts fit your narrative. Not only would it be easier, but it would also be better for everyone involved if you would just come to your senses. That's all for now. See you guys next time.